Yo, 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 yo! What's up, good people? We're back again. The boys from the Phantom Geek Zone, as usual.
Yeah.
I'm Izzy,
I'm Riyaal.
and today we're bringing you another special review. We're going to be breaking down Batman vs. Superman,
So DCEU, right?
DCEU recap
Yeah.
series. Yeah, we're continuing in that line. So as I said, Batman vs. Superman. I don't know, is it?
Dawn of
I was
Justice.
gonna get to that, but now
Yeah.
is it Batman versus Superman? Is Batman v Superman? I feel like the two are used interchangeably, but I don't know if one is more correct
Isn't
than
it
the
the
other. So
same? Uh,
semantics. But yeah, man, look, this was a huge, huge one for so
mm,
many reasons. I mean, this is the first time we're seeing this
Batman
Batman
in
in Ben Affleck's
yeah.
version of Batman in a full length movie. Again, remember this is the chronological
Mm,
order, but I think even in release we got to see
yeah.
this first, right? This is now our second iteration of Man of Steel. The Henry Cavill
Yeah,
version,
it's a
anyway.
second appearance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, second appearance. And keep in mind, right? Of course, these reviews, in a sense, it's one behind the other. But as far as the movies, Man of Steel came out in 2013. This one dropped 2017. I
Yeah.
want to say, quite a gap. So there's a lot to dissect in
Oh.
there as well. But maybe to just start with, like, as they say, first things first, but big things first in this case. It's the first time ever now that Batman and Superman appear on screen
Together,
together,
yeah.
live action, of course. And let's just get right to it. Was it worth the wait? Even if it's more an overall sort of answer, we'll get to the specifics, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think so. Upon rewatch, there was a lot of bad reviews around at the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And upon rewatch, it's like, it's not that bad.
Yes,
It's
yes.
it's actually quite an enjoyable movie. A
Yeah.
bit long.
Yeah, yeah.
You're looking at 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Almost on the dot.
Snyder, right?
It's Snyder.
So
Yeah,
it's Snyder,
yeah,
so you
yeah.
expect longer movies,
Yeah.
darker undertones and whatnot. But I think it was a nice intro into the universe. I think it was a lot of introduction of different characters. So yeah, considering what it was
Yeah.
and what it meant for the universe itself, I think it was well worth the wait.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
There were a few cop outs here and there, but other than that, I mean, I have no qualms with it.
Yeah.
I'd rewatch it.
I definitely, don't think I'm too far off your take because, again, we're talking about the very first time in history, but in the comics, this has been happening
Yeah.
almost since the beginning of time. It was a much anticipated and, a very long awaited event,
Yeah.
if you can put it that way. Hence the strong reactions, I suppose.
Yeah,
I,
fair enough.
again,
These are two very beloved characters.
two of the biggest,
Yeah.
in the game. And I think to try and contextualize things, first maybe to just keep it short in terms of my take on it, I think worth the wait, yes. I didn't feel like, oh, it was a letdown,
Yeah.
we waited so long.
And I think it also leads into how these superhero movies, they actually mirror the real world.
Yes.
So maybe they wanted that 4-year gap
yeah,
per se to
yeah.
like, yeah, okay, fine, it was in 2013 with Man of Steel, but you still got the 4 years in their world where they've established Superman now.
And all the events and the build up to the big
and all the like meetings at Congress and
yes,
the metahumans and what.
I actually want to get to that, right? But I think for now, what I also want to touch on before we get to the more specific elements, we've kind of mentioned it already, but this movie was trashed when it came out, like proper. For what it's worth, right? And I'm glad you mentioned the 3-hour version because as I was watching it, I realized, we didn't even, confirm, because I mean, you've said before, we don't talk about these, we only speak about what to watch, but we don't break it down until, the camera starts rolling. And so while watching, I'm like, damn, I hope Riyaal was watching this 3-hour version because what happened was, and I don't know about you, I watched this movie in the cinema when it came out.
Okay.
So I made sure, I was like, yo, I think it was one of those because there were so many people, waiting in anticipation, and I waited a little too long, so I had bad seats. There's that meme of Willem Dafoe, showing him looking up like this when you're sitting in the front. But that's pretty much, where I ended up because of my late booking.
Yeah,
but
no,
that aside,
we don't do that. And if you're a fellow geek, you always sit in the
gotta be
middle.
the middle. Yeah. Middle row and middle seat.
F10 is usually a good shout.
But of course, it'll depend on the cinema size.
Yeah.
But as long as you go for the middle row and the middle seats, then you'll be fine.
And etiquette, you always leave one space between you and the next person. Don't book a seat.
I think the app actually forces you to do that nowadays.
Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
So, with that said, right, horrible seat aside, my experience of the movie was sort of in line with what everyone else was saying. I don't know if it was to the same degree, but my point is, I was also fairly disappointed. I remember watching it and I was like, nah, man, this is it, you know? Now, I mentioned that along with the 3-hour runtime to say they ended up releasing a longer cut, in a sense. I don't think it was a full-on director's cut. I'm not quite sure. But this is not the theatrical version, is my point. And I remember upon watching, I watched it when it was released.
So like the Snyder Cut before the Snyder Cut.
The Snyder Cut, exactly. You know, I'm trying to avoid that term because I know we're building up towards it later on. So when I watched this one, I got confused. I don't know if I was aware that this is, you know, an extended cut, or did I realize it later on? But I was confused because I was watching it. This is again still in 2017. And I'm like, no, man, why does it not look as bad as it did in the cinema? But again, at some point I realized, no, they reworked it a bit and then, you know, released an extended cut.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of why.
So maybe that's feeding into my opinion.
Exactly.
Now.
It's part of why we now enjoy it overall more than the previous one. I'm actually not aware of what the general sentiment is where this is concerned, funny enough. But yeah, that aside, we enjoyed the movie. And then as far as the specifics, right? One of the things, look, there's a lot of elements in terms of, you know, what goes into making a good or bad movie. When it comes to this one, I would say it was more a marketing thing than a story-based issue. Yeah. There's some movies that are so bad that you just like, why did you guys bother with this? Why did you bother with it? Like, there's hardly any.
Shout out to Wonder Woman 2.
Another thing I was avoiding, you know, mentioning because we've shouted it quite a bit, but it is what it is. It was a horrible movie.
We'll replug it. Go watch it if you haven't seen it.
Exactly. If you feel different, watch it and then, you know, tell us. So that one was just a bad story across the board. Batman v Superman wasn't a bad story. Again, bad marketing.
Okay.
By which I mean, this is just me. I'm not expert. I'm not a movie producer or anything. But I feel like if they had changed one word in the title, something along the lines of Batman meets Superman, Dawn of Justice, that could have worked. Because think about it. People hated this movie primarily because you called it Batman vs. Superman only for Batman and Superman to have one little fight and it not even be the best fight of the movie.
And them not even having beef, like proper beef.
Exactly. So
I get that.
That's where I'm coming from. And I say that to say,
you think maybe they were leading into like, because in the cartoon, like, you know, the DC cartoons, there's always Batman versus Superman.
That could be
it. You think they were maybe just leaning into that because maybe even in the comic canon, that's been maybe that's a whole big thing as well.
Exactly. I think it's more the other half of the coin. One is it's our first time seeing these two titans in live action. The second is there's a whole history behind them not only meeting but fighting, and we were waiting on them to live up to that standard on screen, which they set themselves up for by saying Batman versus Superman.
Fair enough.
So, with the notion of Batman meets Superman, let's talk through the movie in the sense that I think this was more, they were trying to show the polar opposite ends in terms of the ideologies of the two titans and then how it ends up in a clash between them. Not that the clash itself is the main thing.
Yeah, but more of a
the clash is, but not the fight. Let me say that.
The clash of ideas.
So from that perspective, what do you think then in terms of how exactly they laid out the story?
So I think even before we get to that, I would say when I was watching this, the first hour, maybe let's say hour and a half, is a huge focus on Batman. So I would like to even say this is not even Batman versus Superman, but a Batman movie with Superman just happened to be in it. So I think that's where people's gripe was as well, maybe in the marketing as well, because there's a lot of establishing of Ben Affleck as Superman. I mean, Batman. And that completely makes sense. He's such a big character. I think was it the first Batman since Christian Bale?
Yes.
Live action?
And I mean, with that said, very quickly, one of my alternative titles in mind, besides Batman meets Superman, was something along the lines of emphasizing that it's a Batman movie. And then,
Yeah.
so I agree on that. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, like Batman, big wide world or something. It's dumb, but it kind of makes sense as when you need it in.
Redemption.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a whole, and again, I think it speaks to the same principle, just the marketing of it. But yeah.
Yeah, so there was a big emphasis, and I did enjoy that establishing of Batman, establishing of the superpowers into the world, and and then speaking onto your ideologies, just seeing the difference between the two. Just the like Batman, Batman, Bruce Wayne, very different people. One's a philanthropist, a scientist, a genius.
Yeah.
Whereas Batman is, he's the Dark Knight. He's willing to do what it takes to get things done. But not kill.
He does.
Does he kill in this movie?
Yeah. Or at least it's like beyond grievous bodily harm.
Yeah.
It's like if you're not dead, you're on the brink of it, essentially, in terms of how he inflicted violence upon people. Yeah. So I think, do you want to add more?
Yeah. And then you're looking at Superman, where it's the quintessential American hero, the quintessential American man.
Yep.
And now him versus so Clark Kent, and then you've got Superman being his other persona, and then that's switching over, like how does a man and a god relate to each other?
Yeah.
And just how do non-powerful beings such as humans try and bring down or like control a god, and then him thinking as a man, just not being able to reconcile the two, I think was really cool. Whereas Bruce Wayne and Batman, they've already got that self-assurance, that they've been at it a whole long while, and they're comfortable with their ideologies and how they carry out stuff. Where Superman still seems to be finding his feet as well.
Very good point. Yeah.
So I definitely like that juxtaposition of the two. And to see how that comes to a head as well. The payoff wasn't great, but there was a payoff, and it kind of made sense. Seemed a little bit rushed, but
we'll get to the breakdown of the payoff itself. But I think on the ideology thing, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said in terms of not only the polar opposite ideologies, but in terms of shall we say, their careers as superheroes. That's also something that jumped out to me probably for the first time ever, because remember, Man of Steel, Zod, or rather Superman, right, dons the suit, and then damn near a day later or something, Zod comes through. So he's like on his first and biggest mission all at the same time. Then you fast forward, is it 2 years after the fact in terms of the events in this movie? I think they said something about like 2 years ago, or
maybe I missed it. Yeah,
but like
there's some time,
a couple years. It's not too far off, right? Since the events of Man of Steel, because remember, this thing is about the destruction that was caused then,
Metropolis,
and the long-term effects that it's having on society, and now bringing about the notion of, no man, the Superman dude can't just be allowed to roam free as he wants. He needs to abide by the rules, as do the rest of us. He's also in the infancy of his career. Batman is like 20 years deep. Like, I don't know if people are aware of this, right? And to divert slightly, or maybe I'll leave it, let me finish off this point, right? The two ideologies that they said, I think, make sense in the context of who you're talking about. You're talking about, look, it makes sense because we also see this in just about everyday life. If you're a new colleague at a particular job, you're fresh-faced, you got bright ideas, and you're like, oh yeah, no man, guys, we need to optimize, we need to change this. And the guys that have been there look at you like, oh, you poor clueless bastard, because it's not that we didn't think of this thing, it's just the practicalities of it are a little challenging, which is in a sense how Batman was looking at Superman. Like, you think, oh, the world is your oyster, and not to mention this is the whole element of you're an alien from outer space with more power than practically all of us here combined. It doesn't really work that way, and Batman, again, the Dark Knight, he has seen nothing but the darkest of human elements time and time again, which filters into then what we were saying earlier on in terms of how he punishes his victims, from the branding, literally hot metal
like
on your skin.
People,
and basically sentencing them to death, in effect. To even, the level of violence that he inflicts on the people he comes across, right? there's that mannequin of Robin, which speaks to some of the loss he's had. We know
Yeah.
about his initial loss, his parents, but then there's also the loss on the
I think
job.
yeah.
With Man of Steel, we touched on how the world you're setting up has very well informed the decisions that people make, as controversial as they may be. Superman is put in a corner, ended up being forced to kill Zod.
Yeah.
Batman, again, with all the things he's seen and been through, for all we know, he was the happy-go-lucky-ish Batman that we know. And then Robin got killed, and then he just went off the rails. Yeah. So I think, as again, controversial as non-traditional as they may be, the world that Zack Snyder built still justifies how these characters have been characterized. Now, with that said, we touched on the philosophy and ideology of the Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little more about Zack Snyder's vision in terms of because again, Man of Steel was co-written, directed by him. This was co-written and directed by him. So we get to see more of that world and that the ideas building through. What did you think of that?
I liked it. I mean, the darker undertones. Really enjoyed that as well. They weren't too dark, if that makes sense. Like the lighting of the movie, you could still see stuff. As well as I think the way he wrote in side characters was really nice. So obviously you have your Lois Lanes. We know her; she does her thing.
Yeah.
But this was introductions of Alfred.
Yes.
I think even Diana at this point.
Yeah.
This was the first time we saw Wonder Woman.
She joins this universe, and it was before her solo movie.
Yeah, before her solo movies, yeah.
Damn.
So just the introduction of her as well, and then introduction, and I think probably one of the most underrated characters as a whole, Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Okay. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. He was introduced. I think the Flash had a brief cameo.
Yeah, just a slight little.
Yeah, there was a brief cameo of the Justice League. I think who else? Cyborg, where there was.
Aquaman.
I don't know. I can't remember the Aquaman one.
Aquaman. It was remember he hacked the video files from.
Was it the video files? Okay.
Yeah. He hacked Lex Luthor's files, and then he and Diana were trading. Yeah. And he then showed her all the other, meta-humans, as they call them in this universe. And then Aquaman was there underneath. There was this camera filming him.
Is that not the other movie, though?
No. It was on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe just skip my mind. But I like the way he wrote in these other characters.
Yeah.
And then also just establishing the human standpoint as well. Like, you've got your strong, diehard Superman supporters, who stand at his vigil or whatever, and who will back him, because he's doing the right thing. He's doing what they would call the American thing. And then you've got his detractors as well, like I don't know if she was the senator. So the commission, the commission was trying to bring him to. So just showing
just rein him in.
Yeah, just showing people that people they've lost control, but are trying to bring it back in, but they don't really know how.
Yeah.
So I really liked the human element as well.
Yeah.
And then you hear others like your Perrys and Perry Whites and Martha Kents and whatnot. I don't know if there are any other
I think you make a good point when you highlight the humans in this, because again,
it was a big point. Yeah,
it's superhero stories, and we're of course going to focus on superhero characters or whatever. But just in terms of the the normal people in society, the level of attention that is paid to them was profound in here. In fact, surprise, surprise, I also watch other people's reviews of all these movies and so on. And so after we did Man of Steel, I was like, let me just check because I'd said I didn't like Man of Steel before, so I'd never really seen reviews of Man of Steel. And I can't remember who it was, John Campea maybe. He had said he loved how there was a great emphasis on how the humans stepped up as well. Because remember in Man of Steel, there were those, those two ships, if you will, and then restructuring atmosphere. And Superman took care of the one, and the soldiers would take care of the other. So it's like the humans were like, no, man, we're also going to be stepping up here. In a similar manner, the same thing happened where the humans are the ones trying to hold them accountable, at least in terms of who was leading the charge. So I think, man, Zack Snyder, he's a very polarizing director. I mean, for years, I've been calling him probably the most, polarizing in modern history. But I will forever champion Zack Snyder, dog. Like, if you don't know by now, you're going to know today that he was my dude. And I will agree with the polarizing in the sense that not all of his movies would hit.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about him as a director overall. We're talking about these specific movies. So in this particular one, I think once again, he did a great job,
Yeah.
and he probably doesn't get his props in terms of the writing
Yeah, like it's very well structured. Like
and balanced.
Man of Steel feeds into
Yes,
Batman
because
v
remember, this
Superman.
guy had a whole vision,
Yeah.
which unfortunately, in a sense, led to his downfall. But we'll we'll do a little breakdown of that as well later on. Now, again, back to him in this movie. I again think he did a brilliant job in terms of a lot of comic book movies. You do what you do, and no matter what happens, you move on. In the next movie, it's the next villain. It's like you
Yeah.
wipe everything clean from before. There's very small things that will carry on to the point where people have taken to social media. This is now over many, many years at this point, and they'll do little memes. They'll have, like, let's say, a guy looking dusty, and they'll say, "This is me after the Hulk and Iron Man fought in my living room." Something like that, just to show that the damage that these guys inflict
Yeah.
isn't always dealt with. I don't want to say the first, because there've been many, many comic book movies, but the first one that I was aware of was Hancock. In '08 when that dropped,
Yeah.
because the whole thing was, hey man, you're destroying the city, you're doing this, whatever, all to chase a couple of petty thieves. And in as much as Zod was pretty much a god level villain, we can't ignore the damage that was done.
Yeah.
And I love that they pretty much dedicated a whole sequel movie to addressing that thing. Not to mention, it's not just about that, because in the midst of all this, there's the whole thing in Nairobi, which, help me out, you're the geography dude. I don't think Nairobi exists. They just flipped Nairobi. Yeah. So there's the whole thing in Nairobi. It's another country, but there is US presence on there. So once again, what happens there kind of has a splashback effect on America. And there's the notion that Superman killed some people while over there. So again, it's like, hey man, you can't just be flying around doing your thing like it's nothing. There are consequences to what you do. So I really like that. They of course made Wally the personification of this notion, if you will, in terms of, hey man, I now don't have my legs anymore because of Superman. With the destruction that happened. Not to mention the people that actually died.
Yeah, there are consequences to Superman's actions.
And you are driving that point home. You don't just mention it and move on. So I like that ideology. As we've mentioned, the balance of all the various characters and the various levels of character, with the idea in mind that we had Man of Steel, where you focused only on the Superman-related guys. Now you give some shine to the newer people, between Batman, the Gotham characters, and
Lex Luthor,
the Senate people, Lex, and so on. So overall, it becomes a well-balanced story. Again, I don't think we give Zack Snyder enough credit for that. But the number one thing that will have me championing Zack Snyder's vision for the DCEU long after I'm dead and gone is the fact that, dog, we could live to be 1,000 years old. I don't think we will ever experience a director that's as ballsy as Zack Snyder is. I don't know if we address that enough. I'm gonna build it up a bit, right?
Yeah,
we know Marvel.
In what sense? Now?
Yeah. We know Marvel.
Explain for 2 marks.
Marvel, of course, is happy-go-lucky, to the point of being criticized even by us at times, And then DC had the opportunity to go a little darker, which they technically did in this sense. And then, until
they thought it wasn't working.
Yeah, they thought it was too dark. And then at some point they started to, they went a little light, but then once they brought James Gunn in, because remember, James Gunn came in via the Suicide Squad. Yeah. That was his first movie in the DC world.
That was 2021, 22?
I think so, yeah, a couple years ago, not too long ago. And that, in a sense, was their first time going dark again after that whole tumultuous period that they had. Now, the difference between James Gunn and Zack Snyder. James Gunn went edgy. You swear, there's blood, there's whatever.
Gory, yeah.
Yeah, he went gory, which Zack Snyder also did. But the reason I say he was ballsy, do you think they'll ever allow someone to show a dark Superman story? Remember,
he did it.
Man of Steel had the whole controversy of killing Zod, and then we said.
And here it's the selfishness, him choosing Lois over everyone else.
Exactly, right? Because with Man of Steel, which we also are supposed to need to technically correct, we had said that, fine, even if Superman is not meant to kill, perhaps this is the one kill that tells him not to kill. But then we see in this one, although it was a future sequence, that he proper kills. Like there were those guys tied up in the van and this guy just rocks up and lasers them like captives. He lasered and shredded them to pieces. That's how angry he was. Not to mention, the soldiers with the Superman patches that are also just fighting, shooting, and killing people out there. So Superman went even darker as far as his killing. We said a whole thing about, but Zod is this strong and his philosophy. Those guys were mere humans and he still laid them out like it was nothing, So he went way darker than that. And just that whole thing of Darkseid has taken over the world and now, it's this wasteland. I don't think we'll ever have anyone. Perhaps people may want to pitch it, but I don't know if the studio is going to trust anyone to actually bring it to life.
Because how grandiose do you go?
Or rather, how dark do you go?
An American superhero,
That's the thing, right? So I think James Gunn, we of course, are aware at this stage in time, July 2025 is when, the new iteration of Superman via James Gunn under the DCEU is going to come in. And there was a little teaser trailer and so on. And it doesn't look like the happiest-go-lucky Superman, thankfully, because I don't think that'll work in this era.
The color scheme seems lighter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, kind of sort of towing the line. So again, I don't think we'll find anyone who take Superman to that dark of a place, which is pretty much what I mean by, the ballsiness of Zack Snyder. And again, for better or for worse, there was a whole vision he had, and he had little snippets he was showing here and there. Maybe it distracted too much from the current stories and all, but I, for one, was keen to see where that whole thing was going to end up.
They were really good teasers. So what we're talking about is amazing, Batman having visions of the future.
Nightmare sequences.
The nightmare sequences, the anti-life equation. Darkseid, Steppenwolf, all of that. Really, really good teasers, like 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Dude, some of my favorite scenes of the whole movie.
And it's really cool because I'm assuming at this point in time, 2017, as you said, he had a vision for the universe. He was expecting to make many movies after that.
Yes.
And Marvel do that in end credit, mid credit scenes, 30 seconds. Whereas here you're actually getting, this will most likely be part of the movie.
Yes, it's almost like
he's showing you the movie.
Yeah.
And then you eventually show you the pièce de
how
résistance.
We came to those events.
So they're also some of my favorite scenes as well. And then you also see the unlikeliest of combinations,
Yeah, now it's like, man, whether or not we fought or whatever, we're just gonna pair up and try to get this thing done. Yeah, man. So I'm like, I was happy to see. It was almost like he was telling us, if you think this is dark, man, wait till you see, what's coming later. So I will forever mourn the vision there because, we've mentioned the whole idea of Superman and Batman. How many iterations have we had before? And here's then the downside of the future iterations being relatively toned down in comparison to Zack Snyder. It's the fact that it then brings you closer to the previous iterations. Thereby, your room to differentiate isn't that much anymore. And that's the thing I enjoyed about him. Again, one of the main critiques is that he doesn't fully understand these characters. Interestingly enough, he wasn't a comic book geek like that.
Yeah.
Especially not with Batman. I can't remember his history with Superman, but he said, no, I wasn't really reading them like that or whatever. So what he did, of course, you do your crash course, you brush up and sort of thing. But for him, he's not as beholden to the key ideologies of these guys. He looks at them and he's like, nah, what do you mean never kill? What do you mean never this, never that?
How can
I'm sure there are ways in which you can be pushed to get there. And that's why I'm like, it's not the traditional or norm, but he justified it fairly well, But yeah, that's just my whole thing about Zack Snyder. I don't know if there's any other things you want to mention in regards to how he directed this movie.
No, I liked it. And obviously, I would have liked more.
But we got what we got.
Yeah.
Okay, I think with that said, then let's get right into Lex Luthor.
Yes. How do you feel about Lex? Because I know at the time, it's like one is the most glaringly obvious thing. Why does he have hair? 2, Jesse Eisenberg.
Yes.
Because in whatever movie he is, he's
Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, he's Jesse Eisenberg. And I guess to an extent he was here too.
Yes.
But dialed up to 11 with a lot of serial killer.
Serial killer energy.
And then 3, just the story of Lex.
His story.
Yeah.
Look, man, number one, I have no qualms about his casting and portrayal.
Yeah.
Both fronts. Again, I mean, look, 2017 2013 was what, 8 years ago now?
Yeah.
So, I remember a lot, but I don't remember everything about, what I thought and felt at the time. I feel like, because I've pretty much always been, and look, if you're going to talk post 2010 Jesse Eisenberg, good luck getting me to turn against him, because The Social Network is one of the most amazing
Now You See Me
portrayals ever. Now You See Me was a very fun movie as well, So you get to, okay, he's going to play Lex Luthor, and definitely non-traditional, but if you haven't realized by this point,
all
Zack
of the characters
Snyder
are non-traditional.
does not do traditional.
The most
in any
traditional
sense.
is probably Batman.
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
But if you think of the live action version, it's also non-traditional. So Zack Snyder he's all about going against the grain, and we need that. And we know the state of modern comic book movies.
Yeah, there's fatigue.
The fatigue, the staleness, all of that stuff. But anyway, back to Jesse Eisenberg. I was intrigued by the casting. Never would have guessed it, but I was like, all right, let's see him cook. And again, that first iteration, the theatrical version, I wasn't particularly a fan. But in this one, and again, I didn't go and watch it again because I'm like, man, there's only so many bad movies I'm willing to put myself through, So I was like, let me go for the better version and leave it at that. But that being said, I do remember him being one of the improved elements with this extended version. Now, to get to the portrayal more specifically, people focused on, let's say, like the tics, for lack of a better term. And they immediately, of course, the hair as well.
Yeah.
Then they immediately discard him as a valid Lex Luthor. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
Did you see what he was doing?
That's what I'm trying to get at. Because Lex Luthor, right? He's, of course, we know the primary villain in the Superman story. But there's also a genius to what he does in terms of, despite being a mere mortal.
And he's a literal genius in this movie.
You make some boss moves. And he was doing that.
And that's the thing.
He wasn't a pawn. He was the one driving everything, including that little Senate hearing,
Yeah.
So this guy was a major driving force.
Blew everyone up.
It was a plan. And, he's like, hey man, I'm going to plant a bomb and I'm going to stay away.
Kryptonite.
Yes.
He found kryptonite.
He had info on all the metahumans.
Exactly.
Like, these Justice League. We were like, Batman for them. Nah, Batman stole the information from Lex Luthor, dog.
Yeah.
So people don't give him enough credit for what he did in the movie.
He knew all the players before all the players knew who all the players were.
Yes. So
he was playing 3D chess where they were playing 2D chess.
He literally brought both of them to their knees.
Yeah.
Batman and Superman, these titanic figures, basically. That being said, my little caveat is less to do with Jesse and his portrayal, more with the writing. It would have been nice to get a closer glimpse into how he knew all of these things, because it almost felt a bit too...
Show his genius.
Yeah, man. It almost felt a little too close to his fingertips, like everything is rolling through. Oh, yes, we've got this meteorite, it affects Krypton cells like this. Oh, we've got this in the Indian Ocean over there. Yeah. Here's this guy with the superpowers. I know Martha Kent. I know every single thing. And I'm like, nah, man. Even if it wasn't for every one of them, just show us 2 or 3 so that we understand, oh, damn, this guy is very calculated. Let's see it in action, not just the output. That's the one thing I think I would have changed about him. And then the last comment about the hair, he shaved in the end, guys.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Zack Snyder. He builds up towards things.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to just,
give you
always get to the
yeah.
end in every aspect. But yeah, man, your take on him?
Yeah, I like the mad scientist he portrayed.
Yes.
So of versions that I know, it's never a mad scientist, but more of a mastermind.
Yeah.
But here you had mad scientist and mastermind, which I thought was and that fits Jesse Eisenberg typecast really well.
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought it was a refreshing take on Lex Luthor, because from your Michael Rosenbaums to your Gene Hackmans and whatnot.
R.I.P. by the way.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that was sad to hear what happened there.
Yeah.
So those are all really good and really good actors, really good Lex Luthors.
Yes.
But here it was really good Lex Luthor, but also it's not just I have money and I can make decisions. Like, I have money and I'm making these decisions because, I want to have all the power in the world.
And
kind of thing.
He also had an ideology behind the method to the madness, essentially. Yeah. Which is him saying, hey man, if God is all powerful, he can't be all good, and so it's like he shared the same concerns.
for the philosophy people, you'll understand it's
Yes.
philosophy 101.
And I mean, our rule about villains, which tends to be an issue in these comic book movies, is that, hey, man, let their motivation be the driving force behind everything. You know, you can't just fight for the sake of fighting. You can't just destroy for the sake of destroying. So this guy's like, no, man.
And that's the thing as well. Like, he didn't get a lot of screen time, but
he was arguably the most impactful piece, you know, on the chessboard. So I think, yeah, man. The one other thing I would have loved, the multi-references that he gave to his dad.
Yes, I would have loved to see some flashbacks.
A deeper backstory.
Daddy issues.
Yeah.
We've said it many times.
Yeah.
Villains and superheroes are created
if
with
it
daddy
works,
issues.
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because when he was talking about his dad, he was like frantic about his dad. You know?
Yeah, man. So I think that for me was the only other thing. So overall, you also enjoyed his portrayal as well.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. So it's something different, and I enjoyed the different.
And I think you know, in terms of, because I'm starting to sense a bit of a theme. I don't know if this is maybe only our second movie. Probably, yeah. Because there was Man of Steel in this, where there was, you know, an outcry when it came out, and we were like, man, hold on, you know. So I'm intrigued on the one hand to see how often that's going to come up. But on the other side, I wonder if maybe time and distance has added something to it.
I also think to watch something outside of people's opinions and stuff, you know.
Yes. So the dust has settled, as it were. Yeah.
But obviously, staying away from spoilers, you have to be very disciplined with that as well. So, so maybe you just forget about it and rewatch it at a time when you unbiased,
without the noise.
I think helps.
That's part of it. Aside from it just being good, I mean, at some point we'll probably admit that nope, you guys were right. This is a bad movie, but definitely, you know, this is not one of them.
Yeah.
So again, back to the, you know, shall we say, controversial title, Batman vs Superman. We gotta talk about the big fight between the two of them, right? Perhaps building up to that. This was meant to be the biggest fight of the movie. We had about 4, maybe 5 fight scenes. And of course, this is not the best. I think we've established that. But overall, I don't think the others lived up to the expectation, number one. Number two, keep in mind, whatever you do, particularly in these connected universes, there's not necessarily a domino effect, but it's almost like you adding another piece to an established puzzle. Man of Steel, we were gushing over just how incredible the fight scenes were in there. And then for the same guy to come back with a movie that doesn't quite live up in the action aspect, I was like, Zach, what are you doing?
I guess it's hard to scale as well, because Superman's on a godly level, where Batman is just a person.
But now, right, a lot of people, just on the basis of the Batman vs Superman, before the movie came out, they were like, what are you talking about? Batman is a human. How is he going to fight Superman?
But even Superman said, if I wanted to kill you, I could have, but I didn't.
But again, back to Zack Snyder's, you know, ability to justify, hey man, the kryptonite came in handy. And
he portrayed it really well. He showed how smart Batman is, how tactical he is.
Yes. In case you didn't know,
he showed us who the world's greatest detective is.
We've mentioned it's not the first time fighting, you know, yes, in live action, but there's a reason why they've fought multiple times, because Batman knows a thing or two about Superman's vulnerabilities, rather. We see him as invulnerable, but it's not the case. He is vulnerable. You just need to exploit that. If someone, even if it's not Batman, can't do it, you have a chance.
Lex did it as well.
Precisely.
Obviously, Batman did it with kryptonite.
Yeah.
Lex did it with the human side of Superman.
Exactly. You know? So he's not fully, you know, immune to vulnerability. That's what I love in principle. I just don't think the execution of it. So again, you know, you can continue your point, but I think we can't fully judge it as you know, mortal versus. I think there are ways to still. Because I'm not saying give us a godly fight. I'm saying give us a great fight.
Yeah. Maybe, do you think maybe the fight sequence between Batman and Superman was a bit rushed? Like, did you want more time?
I just know that whether you have, you know, 2 minutes or 10 minutes, make it impactful. And I don't think they did that.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a matter of the duration. It's just how they went about fighting. There could have been a bit more.
Do you think maybe the stakes weren't high enough?
The stakes,
they were high.
The stakes were. It's just the fight itself.
Yeah,
Again, everything leading to it, the principles, the ideologies, I'm with it. It's just that the fight itself,
so the execution
there
itself.
could have been a little more that, you know, they could have done. And this is again in conjunction with the notion that all the fights we saw, there's only one that had me hyped up.
Yeah.
The rest, you know, so I think it's like disappointing fight. Maybe we're building up to the big one. Then you get there, and again, it's like, not, you know,
maybe
what I was hoping for.
Maybe also it suffered from overhyping.
Yes, again, maybe based on the
Yeah.
title, because if we weren't inherently expecting a fight between them,
Yeah.
I maybe would have digested this a lot easier. But yeah, from your side, did it live up to the hype? Did you feel it was okay?
I think the fight was nice. It was done well.
Okay.
As you said, not the greatest, but
Yeah.
I think from what we've seen or reviewed so far, probably one of the better ones.
Yeah.
The one gripe I had was how it ended.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this was a studio plant or maybe Snyder just picking up on the thing and be like two different names. Okay, let me just put it in the fans' minds now or whatnot.
Yeah.
But just how it ended is like Martha. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like that.
For me, I would say I don't now. At first, I had an issue, but I think if I recall correctly, the theatrical version, the way the Martha thing came out was horrible.
Okay.
This was technically better, but still not as best as it could have been. But the ideology behind it, again, I actually don't have an issue with this time around. The whole Martha thing, especially because it's a connection that no one has ever made.
Yeah, ever. Yeah.
Literally,
I do appreciate, like, I can appreciate the connection.
Yeah, the most hardcore of fans.
Yeah.
Well, we never connected the two. But again, because the guys hardly shared any, screen space. Now, to answer your question, it was Zach's, not Zach directly, but because Zach is part of the writing team. There's a writing team that decided, because I can't remember his name now. Is it David S. Goya, I think, yeah, who also co-wrote on, I think, The Dark Knight Rises and Man of Steel, and then even in Batman v Superman, he co-wrote. He was asked about this. I watched an interview of his from like last year, actually, so a fairly recent one. They were like, "Hey man, look, we got to talk about the Martha thing." And long story short, the writing team decided, okay, we can understand what can bring them to fight, but what commonality is there that can bring them together?
I guess mommy issues.
So yeah, they both lost their dads. He's lost, of course, the dad and the mom, but there's an attachment to the moms. So I think, it was the writing team, not the studio. But just in terms of how it was brought about, could have done slightly a little better, which is also my bottom line about the fight. It wasn't horrible, but could have been slightly better. And I've mentioned a couple of times, I don't know, do you want to say anything more about this fight before I move on?
No.
I've mentioned a couple of times already about how there's another fight that I found pretty exciting. And for me, it was when Batman went to rescue Martha. The way he just ran through all those warehouses. Oh my goodness. There was a guy he took and he punched or threw him into a wall and the wall broke. And I'm like, this guy. And the way he was just punching people as if he's trying to punch their heads out of their spines.
Ruthless,
not holding back, even though he's fighting mere mortals. He's already got their guns. Like, come on, I'm sure it'll take a lot less than that to knock him out. But I love that he was just so fed up. But I suppose there was also that adrenaline from the Superman fight he just had.
He knows the loss of the mom.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
So
he's like
going out of his way to defend
yeah.
it. That was pretty cool. So yeah, the way he was just fighting through all those guys.
Because I'm sure like the fight as well was also an eye opener for Batman, because throughout the movie he saw Superman as a problem,
and now he's got the actual villain.
Yeah, now he's met Superman face to face.
Yeah,
they've connected on a deeper level, kind of, and they've shared blood in a sense from fighting.
Yeah, that's what
so
maybe
I think now
the energy built up from that previous fight is probably what added to this. Not to mention, hey man, this is probably his way of getting back at someone, because he also got his ass laid out. We're not gonna act as though that did not take place. And even if it's mere humans, like, man, I just need to punch the hell out of something, and he found a good couple of somethings in there. So that for me was by far the greatest fight. There was another one, when Superman was following was it Batman? There was didn't Superman have some sort of interaction with the warehouse guys? Oh, this is when he told Batman, "Hey man, this is your one warning."
Oh, okay.
And then there was a whole, but that whole scene, even Batman himself chasing those guys, I was like, nah, you could have done a lot more to add some excitement to that. So for some reason, man, the action scenes here were kind of watered down.
Yeah, but I mean, the action scenes were watered down, but the story itself was built up really well.
Hence my issue with the title being tied to a fight.
Fair enough.
As opposed to a more generic element. So I think the one other thing I want to touch on is because again, this is Batman's intro movie, and in a sense it's his movie. The chemistry with him and Alfred, his lore in this, him and Alfred, the Batmobile, the suit, the Batcave, all of that, everything Batman.
I think it's my favorite one in the whole, like...
Which aspect of it, though?
I just love Alfred being like the voice of reason. He's like, you need to sleep, you need to eat.
Yeah.
No, this is not what happened. And then he's like Alfred, and yes, Master Wayne. Like,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
just
yeah.
there all the time, and he's always just Alfred being sassy as well.
Yes,
Like I
yes,
just love the
yes.
little
It was pretty cool.
Bruce Wayne being stoic and all reserved and melodramatic.
Which we understand.
Yeah, which
but
we understand.
the contrast of the two.
But the contrast of Jeremy Irons playing Alfred and just being sassy and like
yeah.
I don't know. I just enjoy it so much.
Yeah.
In terms of the like suit design, like that suit, that was good, really, really good. I like the fact that it's an older Batman, so Affleck being a little bit older.
Man.
I really, really like that.
Yeah.
And that's obviously that contrast as to what we know. Whereas Christian Bale was like a like young, but
I mean, we walked his entire journey from the very beginning.
Enough,
yeah.
And then you've got Pattinson, which is more like a young,
much younger as well. Yeah.
So I really, really like their chemistry between the two of them, and how like Batman has such hatred, but there's this one person that's always there, always for him.
Yeah, brings him down to earth essentially. Yeah.
And then Batmobile and the gadgets and stuff are always pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can never give it a like if it's super high tech and sci-fi or like not.
Then we're with
I'm just here for it.
Yeah, I get you, man.
And I think the introduction is really nice, and it's and like the training scene as well before the fight,
man.
Like just
the greatest ever, the greatest ever. Yeah,
like just showing like Batman putting in the work,
Yeah.
That was really cool. Like just he is just a man, so he has to work for it.
Exactly.
So I think I really, really like that.
Yeah.
And also just I think maybe in the greater scheme of the universe, making Batman a central point. He's the one who's getting the visions, like seeing Barry Allen.
And then later bringing everyone together.
And then seeing the nightmare, and then here he's bringing everyone together. I like the introduction and how they portrayed it.
Yeah.
I definitely think it was magic if there was more. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but yeah.
And then Bruce Wayne to finish it off, because we saw that side of him as well.
So I think we have chatted about this. I always said like Ben Affleck is a better Bruce Wayne than he is a Batman.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Break that down. I understand him being a great Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Batman in terms of where you feel maybe is it a matter of falling short or just comparing the two?
I think just comparing the two.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Wow.
Like in the screen time, like let's see, you've got him. He being his stoic nature, but then you got times when he's vulnerable as well, and then times when I think at the dinner scene or I don't know.
Is it at Lex's party?
Yeah, Lex's party. Yes. Like you see the Playboy comes out with.
I absolutely love that
the
scene.
Playboy comes out.
He was distracted by Diana.
Yeah. You see, like it's nice to see. It humanizes him a little bit more as just being this dark knight.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's a little bit better, because it maybe gave more into the character.
Okay.
It showed many facets at the party specifically. Showed many facets, like the Playboy.
Yeah.
Also, like he knows about Clark Kent. That tense standoff they have there, as well as just Alfred in his ear the whole time, and just the spy, the espionage side.
Yes.
Cool. So that's why I say it's maybe a little bit better, but maybe that's because we've seen more of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think even at the party they're like, he's a recluse, but he never attends these things.
And
he's actually attending. So why is he attending now?
Yeah.
Raises more questions.
But again, remember, if you talk about Lex's party, it's because he was already on a mission to find that. Yeah. It was part of the Batman mission in a sense, so it was strategic to attend. Yeah. Okay, now I see.
So that's what I'd say. And then obviously in the Batman, you see the genius behind it, and the build up and whatnot. But I think in terms of character work, Bruce had a little bit more.
Okay, that's a very
because the focus always just usually tends to be on Batman and his villains. Whereas here, Batman, this being an older Batman, his villains have already most likely been defeated.
Yeah, the main ones.
Yeah, the main ones.
Okay.
So it's just.
Okay. Yeah. Now, for me, I don't know if it's as easy to pick one over the other. I definitely love them equally, and I love them greatly. I think I've been saying, man, from the get-go, Ben Affleck as Batman for me is like top 2, top 3.
Yeah, for sure.
He's just up there. We needed that solo movie to cement it properly. But again, we only have so much to work with.
Yeah.
But for me, it was enough to put him that high up. I like that large physique that he had, because growing up in the cartoons, that's the Batman that I was watching. I say this a lot, that I had the cartoons in place of comic books for a lot of the super geeks out there in the world. So when I saw him, I was like, ooh, amazing. Just the look alone. Because everyone else were convinced by the portrayal, the ones that we loved, that is.
But he was
with
the
him
type
from
as
the
well,
casting, you're like, yes, I see it. And there was that image that floated around so many times as far as the promotional image. And even when I see it in the movie, I get goosebumps, man. When that closet, so to speak, turns around and they show the suit, and then he's just standing in front of it watching it, like that, man. And the thing about him, I love his suit so much as well. It might be my favorite suit ever, the standard one, not the mechanical one.
Yeah.
Might be my favorite Batman suit
It doesn't
ever.
seem as like plastic or leathery.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like
it
it's
seems,
a nice balance.
I don't know, man. It just fits
well
that world
balanced,
so much, And I like how it looks great on and off him. While it's on the mannequin, it looks menacing. While he's got it, of course, I mean,
he wears it.
You saw in so many different scenes, everyone just being scared and running away when he comes through. And in terms of then the portrayal, again, on both sides, man, Bruce Wayne, Batman, Ben Affleck did an amazing job. I love that he's older and he's so, as you said, stoic. He's tired of all the bullshit because he's like 20 years deep, dog. How long are you gonna try and treat these villains with kindness when they care nothing about it, So I loved it quite a lot. I love the chemistry with him and Alfred.
Yeah,
it was perfect, man. It's one of those things.
It's like one of my
which is the catch-22 with recreating an established character, especially one that's been done multiple times. At some point, someone is going to become the gold standard, and we're always going to measure you against him. That's of course Michael Caine for us as far as Alfred.
But the nice thing is Michael Caine was like an older,
and he was a father figure, sort of. This one was more of a like a partner, man. Like the whole detective
father figure-ish, but more like
I feel they were closer in.
Or like to quote Spider-Man, the man behind the chair.
Yes. So he did the whole thing. They go on the mission together. That's why I also go for the partner thing. It's like detectives, the buddy cop in a sense.
But you must. I guess we also understand Alfred's also been there for 20 years, going through the journey.
Exactly.
So they know each other really, really well.
And at the same time, it's nice that they aren't both now all tired and stoic. Alfred is like the light in Batman's life, in the Dark Knight's life. He's all tired, taking the punches, whatever, and then Alfred somehow still retains the hope and then fills Bruce with it, whenever he needs it. So I loved everything around, the Batman lore in here. What I didn't like, which is again, me, man, I'm gonna find something to nitpick at some stage. It was the Bat Cave. It felt a little too penthousey for me.
Okay, you wanted to be more cave.
Yeah, man, like more a proper cave. Yeah. I like the integration with the waterfall just coming through and whatever, because we know that there's a whole water feature thing underneath. Fine, but I needed it to look and feel like a cave. Funny enough, remember Christian Bale's one got an upgrade. It was a cave, and then they had that white aesthetic thing. I didn't mind that one as such because again, it wasn't like penthouse levels. But this one seems almost too advanced in terms of the setup of it. However, that being said, I did love the technology that they had in there because again, it's like you're a billionaire, dog. Use your money to do your thing.
What is it they say? Batman's superpower is being rich.
It's money. So when he was building, those chemical weapons with the kryptonite, and you see the lasers and this big machinery and whatever, I'm like, I like seeing the money at work in the cave itself because you usually see it directly tied to Bruce Wayne and on the outside. With Batman, you'd see it in the gadgets, but the making of, between that and him training.
I guess as well, it likens it to Lex. It didn't just show, it showed more depth of character.
Yes, because
showing us why he's the world's greatest detective. Or
and showing him putting in the work behind that. Because remember, not to take away from Christian Bale's take, he got his suits via Wayne Enterprises. They just bought everything, assembled it, and that was that. But this guy is like, he's in there grabbing the wrench, doing Christian Bale, look, there was the whole scene with the bullet putting it together. He did do things, but I think Ben Affleck's Batman did that to a much greater extent. So I think, man, overall, I think those are pretty much the key touch points. Maybe the one final thing, I don't know if there's anything you want to mention regarding the killing of Superman. I loved it.
I loved it as well.
Yeah.
But before that, I think likening it back to Man of Steel, before we finish up with Superman's death, Superman was still on a journey in this movie,
Yes.
which I really enjoyed that as well. It just
Yeah.
shows like no matter how powerful he is, he's always growing. He's always,
Yeah.
always, moving forward. And even in the sense that, um, as you say, that last fight when he's with Lois and he's like, "I love you, Lois. I have to go now."
They
kind of
knew
thing. Yeah.
exactly what that meant. That was a powerful moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
enjoyed
like
that quite a bit.
Doomsday, I loved how Lex made him blood of my blood, and he
Yeah,
shows you the
yeah, yeah.
hand. It's like, oh man.
And again, we touched on show us certain things.
Yeah.
They showed Lex attaining information. They cut away, but we know that he got information about the
like he knew
Kryptonians
everything
and
about the Kryptonians.
the whole
and
thing
stuff,
of
yeah.
remember they used to build their own babies essentially.
Yeah.
So he got all the information from that little Pokedex, whatever the hell it's called, the ship
Codex.
basically Codex.
Yeah.
The ship gave him the
Pokedex is a
information.
different-
No, I know. I'm just saying
different
that
types of geeks. We're not there
that
yet.
type of technology. But yeah, we saw him
yeah.
attain the information. So that's what I wanted to see more of in the other aspects. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think that final arc in the last fight with Doomsday was
Yeah.
shorter than I don't know.
Yes,
It felt a bit
yes,
short.
Yes.
But I think that's fine because they showed enough.
Okay.
Because we know that every time Doomsday dies, he comes back alive stronger than before.
Okay.
You know, that's his the gist of his power.
I don't know it to be his overall law. I saw it in this movie.
So similar in Smallville, if you can remember, he was there
Vaguely,
very
but yeah.
So basically,
okay.
he's like the ultimate creation.
Yeah,
and I guess it was said as much.
Okay.
Always evolving. So you had to kind of kill him early. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they kind of did that here. But to think that of his maybe like 5 minutes or 10 minutes of being alive, he kills Superman. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
It was
that's
impactful.
absolutely incredible. It's an
Okay.
incredible feat.
Okay.
But what also stood out to me is like the humans were willing to nuke Superman.
I loved it. Yes.
I was like, what?
Again, my dude, we are not gonna see another director
We're
as
not pulling
ballsy
any punches
as
here.
Zack Snyder.
Because
Yeah,
everybody's
because they're like, yo, man.
Because everybody's like, launch the nukes in other movies, and the keys never get
Like,
turned.
no,
and the
but our
buttons never
guys
get pushed.
at the last second, they're like, yeah,
And
yes.
just like, oh no, they're already
launch. They're
gone.
like, the
already
key's
gone.
hot. The key's hot. With your command, sir. God help us all. Launch.
Yeah.
Man, that was insane.
Yeah, and to see the look on Batman's face, and what I really liked in that fight, yes, they introduced Diana in that fight, and she really killed her
Yes.
moment. That was her
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
I think I like this iteration of her the best. Like
Yes.
the
Zack Snyder treated her the best.
non-colorful, like the bronze. Like bronze just looks better. I don't know. The bronze looked good to me, and just the plainness of everything. I think like she just let the character stand out, not the merch. If you say. The suit. That's what I really liked, and she owned it.
Yeah.
And Batman took a step back in this fight.
Yeah.
Like he just wasn't involved at all because
I mean, hey man, it's a little out of his scope.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a little out of his scope, and it was just logically it made sense. It's like,
these are the super beings. Let them fight these super beings. Yeah.
So I liked that it was quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it was a bit short, but I liked it. But knowing that Doomsday gets stronger as things progress, they killed him quickly.
Yeah.
And that's and then the death kind of had me like shocked, you know, like
man.
It's Superman. He's not supposed to die. I guess that's kind of what it was for me.
But at least he died in a way that made sense as well, you know, because even the nukes, they didn't kill him. They brought him down a couple bars, definitely. So I enjoyed that aspect as well. I think for me, a few things, right? I mean, for the most part, I'll echo what you said. What I've realized, particularly with comic book movies, because, you know, we watch a bunch of these at a time and then, you know, in preparation for our reviews. So similar things appear across different ones. I need these people to stop having nighttime fights because CGI and nighttime do not go well together, you know. In this one, the fight wasn't that bad, lighting-wise. It wasn't that bad. But overall, I don't like Superman's suit. It had this weird... It looked very CGI in certain parts. And then there were some moments, unfortunately, I can't remember. I remember there was one scene that stood out where I was like, you see, now it looks real. But in all the rest of them, it looked, you know, kind of more on the CGI-esque element. It was kind of reflective, but not really. And I'm just like, no, man, this thing it's very distracting. And I just don't like that aspect of it. you make a good point again with toning down Diana's colors on her suit.
Yeah.
It blended a lot better with nighttime. Of course, Batman is a dark knight, so that's where he thrives. And Doomsday, the design, I think could have been a little.
I think initially it was like, what is this like blob of thing?
Yeah,
but
then
as you saw him evolve,
yeah.
like it kind of was more gritty.
But for me, on the CGI side of things, could have used a touch more polish. And yeah, man, of course, even the whole thing of the killing of Superman, the fact that, he was killed by Doomsday, and the law I'm aware of is that he was the Superman killer type of thing. And to have it as JC's backup plan, again, shows the whole thing of being calculated and think, hey, man, I'm relying on the bat. If he's going to fail, then, there's something else I'm going to go into. So he's not as mad as people portray him to be. He is mad, but there's a genius behind it. And I like how everything just flowed nicely together. The ballsiness, again, of nuking Superman and killing Superman in the story and letting it breathe, so to speak, as far as... you end the movie.
They had a whole death sequence for him, the funeral.
Yeah, man. You move on and continue in the next one. I think, so again, man, overall, top to bottom, look, 3 hours, I don't mind inherently.
Yeah.
But for this particular movie, you could have chopped and changed a few things around. Maybe extend a scene or two here, cut out, one or two there. Like, we don't need to see, Martha and Thomas Wayne getting killed again.
Okay.
I look, it looked beautiful. The cinematography of it. And of course, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He also has a great stature. Yeah. There's such a good matchup, man.
Or is it Javier Bardem? I don't know.
So, that matchup of him being Thomas Wayne and, obviously they've got a good relationship with Zack Snyder.
And that's the thing, Jeffrey Dean Morgan has a swagger.
I was going to say him and Zack Snyder, I mean, from the comedian to even this now, but the stature, with him and that great stature, Thomas Wayne, same with, Ben Affleck having that, I like that father-son pairing, Papa Kent coming back.
Yeah, on the pilgrimage,
I forgot about it, actually. Yeah. When I watched it again, I was like, oh, they brought, Kevin Costner back, Jonathan Kent. But again, I'm like, maybe could have done with that. There's a couple scenes here and there because I feel like they did a great job with Man of Steel in terms of establishing their connection and passing on that philosophy completely. And then he just goes on. And he did say, no, I thought my father wanted this. Now he can struggle with it fine, but don't bring the father back again. So I think the 3 hours could have been slightly better utilized, but given what we have, I overall still found it to be, a great movie. So what would you give it out of 10?
7 out of 10.
7?
Yeah.
Wow.
7.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say 7's a good. It's good because Man of Steel was 8, and it's not Man of Steel. Yeah.
That's a very good point. Then I'm gonna have to settle on a 7.5.
Okay.
I was gonna lean closer to 8, but you make a good point because again, I was like, I had less issues with Man of Steel than with this one. And I think for me,
7, but definitely rewatchable, even though it's so
without a doubt. Yeah, look, it's a long one. You gotta be ready, nice and relaxed, and you don't just focus as well because it's more philosophy based. Yeah. So whatever is being said filters into a lot of things down the line. So I'd say 7 out of 10 as well. And then now out of our DCEU movies, right? Because you have Man of Steel and then the Wonder Woman 1, following. As we said, the second one, man. Where does this one slot in the top 3?
Ooh, I would say second. So you've got Man of Steel,
Batman v Superman,
and then Wonder Woman. I may have given Wonder Woman a higher rating than...
but we did say we were gonna...
But in terms of enjoyment and what it means for the universe, I definitely think second for me.
I'm inclined to agree, primarily because, look, it's established those 3 movies are great. For me, the main caveat is just how well it all flows together.
Yeah.
I like that because not only is Man of Steel established, we know about Batman's history. So from the start, you just get to it, which is what I've always said a great sequel needs. Don't try and lull your way through a sequel because it's like, hey, man, we hit a whole crescendo in the previous movie. Now let's just get to it in the second one. And they did that in this. In as much as Wonder Woman is not a sequel, but just the pacing does give it a little more, for me. So I'll agree. Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman for one. for our DC rankings. Yeah, then I think with that established, that brings us to the end of our review. Shout out for sticking with it. And yeah, man, if you haven't as yet, hit that like, hit that subscribe.
Yeah.
We'll catch you then at the next review.
Peace.
Peace.